Tarot cards can be a great way for journaling, personal reflection, and creative writing. And so today I invite you to come journal with me. And the topic that we are going to be exploring today is going to be selected by one of these oracle cards. So if you'd like to join me, get your journal, your pen and paper, or just find a relaxing, quiet place to sit. So the topic for today's reading is wish. Very interesting. At the bottom here, we have despair versus hopeful. Really beautiful artwork too. This woman, she's like very celestial and ephemeral. And it's almost as if the wind is running through her hands and she's surrounded by butterflies. Butterflies are a representation of transformation, right? It's from the caterpillar to the chrysalis to the butterfly. It represents transformation. And I think the key word here, wish, connects with desire and hope and dream. So that's today's topic. Very interesting one. Now I'm going to shuffle this deck. This is the True Black Tarot. And I'm going to pull 3 cards that are going to guide today's reading and guide today's journaling session. The first card I have is the 6 of Pentacles. This is very interesting. The first thing that I recognize is the stark contrast in the artwork here. We have 3 vibrant gold coins sitting on the surface, and yet 3 kind of rusty, dark, dirty coins sitting underneath. The 6 of Pentacles is the concept of inequality and contrast. The next card is the Queen of Swords. This is a beautiful card. I imagine the Queen of Swords is that embodied aspect of our personality in which we're very strategic, we're very confident, we're very decisive in our actions and who we are. She stands very strong and very capable, a very capable embodiment of the self. And then the last card, beautiful card here. I have the Magician. The Magician is about self-actualization and bringing concepts from our mind into reality. Very much in tune with the concept of wish, manifestation, desire. The Magician is essentially the action in which we harness our own power to create our own world, to navigate our own world. So I'm going to get my journal and explore these concepts today with you. What is a wish? Where do wishes come from? When you say that you desire something or you want something, how did that originate? How did that come into being? And I think at the core of it, our recognition of desire comes from the 6 of Pentacles here, that illustration. We see a contrast in our life of maybe what we have versus what we don't have, or what we desire versus what we want to transform. It's the recognition of inequality. It's the recognition of contrast or differences, that light and shadow in our life that ultimately sparks that desire for change and that desire for growth, and maybe that desire that wants to be fulfilled. And I think that's really interesting because normally inequality is seen as something that is negative. When we encounter lack in our life, it's often something that can very easily become toxic. So when does a wish become toxic, I think, is when we encounter this inequality, whether it be in society or with ourselves, and we react to it with fear or judgment or envy or despair. And instead of materializing this wish into the Magician and the Queen of Swords, which is about self-confidence and empowerment, instead we take that toxic attitude and it becomes restrictive and limiting, and it ultimately diminishes our power, and it breeds that weakness and despair. So sometimes when we encounter a wish, we're really encountering a crossroads of the self. We recognize that I want, I make, I do comes from that Magician, comes from that self-involvement, self-actualization of life. And we know that we need to set in strategy, intention, planning, and thought. But if we get so caught up in the have and the have not, the overwhelming despair of recognizing inequality, that self-actualization, that powerful attitude to change our reality and to manifest that which we desire, can become toxic and self-limiting. So in many ways, when you feel a wish or a desire bubble up inside of you, first recognize that you're viewing the contrast of life. You're viewing the parallels, the spectrum of possibilities, very well illustrated in the Six of Pentacles, of these two extremes. But next, you're given a choice. What do you want to do with that contrast? When does a wish become inspirational, right? When we have self-actualization, when we have planning and creation that can be put into being, when internal forces are directed into self-power, and we have the connection and realization of how the self impacts reality. Ultimately, we're given a choice. And that choice is based off of our free will, and it's based off of our self-power and our self-divine choices. One of the stories that come into my mind is a book called Wild by Cheryl Strayed. And this is a book about a woman. She goes on a 1,000-mile journey on the Pacific Crest Trail. This is a trail that goes from Mexico to Canada. And she started this trail after the death of her mother. And when her mother died, it shattered her sense of identity and stability. It really gave her that contrast in life of joy versus grief. And everything that came out of the death of her mother, the book begins in suffering. We see it begins in that darkness of that inequality of life, grief, addiction, divorce, personal loss. It was a stark contrast between the life that she had and the life that she longed for, the life that she wished for. And so the book becomes a journey in which she's faced with her own personal manifestation of the magician and the Queen of Swords, in which she goes on a wish to save herself, to become someone that she can respect, that she can have this self-worth and direction. Along the trail, she essentially confronts challenges the entire way. She has despair and hope. Those are common themes of the book itself. And every single mile that she goes on, every single step that she takes, she, just like the magician, is manifesting and creating not only the person that she wants to become, which is the Queen of Swords, but also the reality that she desires and wishes for herself. Her growth is not born from this perfect condition, but rather a confrontation of the inequality of her life, a confrontation of despair versus prosperity. It's very beautiful how essentially we can take tragedy, we can take the dark contrasts in our life, and by recognizing that wish for change, by recognizing that wish for transformation, we can apply the magician and become our own Queen of Swords. If you haven't read the book Wild by Cheryl, I would highly recommend it. It is this transformative book dealing with wishes and desires between I can't versus I did. And I wrote here, by directing her will, she transforms her life 1 mile at a time. Thank you so much for joining me on today's reading. And hopefully you can journal with me tomorrow. Take care, everyone.